meets this morning to consider the nominations of Dr. William LaPlante to be Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment, Mr. Erik Raven to be Undersecretary of the Navy, Ms. Tia Johnson to be a Judge of the United States Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces, and Dr. Marvin Adams to be Deputy Administrator for Defense Programs for the National Nuclear Security Administration. On behalf of the committee, I want to thank each of you for your willingness to return to public service. I would also like to welcome the guests and family members who are present today. I'm pleased to recognize Secretary Ash Carter, who will introduce Dr. LaPlante, Senator John Tester, who will introduce Mr. Raven, Secretary Jay Johnson, who will introduce Ms. Johnson, and Ambassador Linton Brooks, who will introduce Dr. Adams. Additionally, Dr. LaPlante, I welcome your brother John. Mr. Raven, I welcome your wife Ann. And Ms. Johnson, I welcome your husband, Al, and commend him to his service in the United States Army. We are grateful to each of you for your support. Dr. LaPlante, you are well qualified to be Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment, or USD A&S. You have decades of technical expertise from your current role as President and CEO of the Charles Stock Draper Laboratory, as well as your previous service as the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Acquisition during the Obama administration. The USD A&S has a wide variety of duties, including delivering timely, cost-effective capabilities for the armed forces, supervising all elements of the defense acquisition enterprise and the defense industrial base, overseeing the modernization of our nuclear forces, and serving as the principal advisor to the Secretary on acquisition, sustainment, and core logistics. If confirmed, streamlining and expediting the acquisition process must be one of your highest priorities. We need to field equipment to our warfighters quickly while also ensuring acquisitions remain on budget. Although some progress has been made in recent years, the Defense Department's acquisition process still remains on the Government Accountability Office's high-risk list. Similarly, the Department must improve the operation and sustainment of weapon systems over their life cycles, a cost that is often overlooked in the acquisition process. Dr. LaPlante, I'd like to know how you would plan to address these challenges this morning. Mr. Raven, you are nominated to the second highest position in the Department of the Navy. Your experience on the Senate Appropriations Defense Subcommittee will serve you well in this role. If confirmed, you will face a number of critical issues that confront the Department of the Navy. The Navy and the Marine Corps have historically had to deal with the day-to-day strains of deployment and high operating tempos. With concerns about the readiness of our deployed and non-deployed forces, the next Undersecretary's efforts in managing improvements in the force and its supporting structure will be crucial. In addition, the Navy is tested to meet today's priorities while also shifting investments to support our long-range strategic competition with China and Russia. Mr. Raven, I look forward to your testimony on how we can best balance these challenges. Ms. Johnson, you are nominated to be a judge of the United States Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces. If confirmed, you would serve a 15-year term on the court. You bring a distinguished career of service as an Army Judge Advocate, National Security Counsel in the Obama administration, and Professor of Law at Georgetown University. The Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces is the senior appellate court with exclusive jurisdiction over the Uniform Code of Military Justice, sometimes regarded as the Supreme Court of military law. Ms. Johnson, based on your uniformed and civilian career experiences, I would like to know what you view as the key strengths and weaknesses of the military justice system, including the fairness and effectiveness of the system. In addition, the FY22 National Defense Authorization Act implemented extensive changes to the UCMJ, including a statute that would criminalize sexual harassment under some circumstances. I hope you will share your views on the Court of Appeals' role in reviewing challenges and issues with the recent sexual assault and sexual harassment statutes, including your view on defendants' rights under the UCMJ. Dr. Adams, you are nominated to be Deputy Administrator for Defense Programs for the National Nuclear Security Administration, or NNSA. You have had a distinguished career at Texas A&M University, conducting research on nuclear science, serving on numerous advisory boards at the NNSA, and recently helping Los Alamos National Laboratory develop its plutonium manufacturing operations. If confirmed, you will assume an expansive range of duties. You will oversee more than 50,000 contractors and NNSA federal employees with a budget of $16 billion. while simultaneously meeting the Defense Department's construction and stockpile requirements. Dr. Adams, I'd like to know your views on how to meet the Defense Department's requirements while at the same time preserving the core scientific capabilities at our national laboratories. Again, I'd like to thank our nominees, and I look forward to your testimonies. I understand that Senator Tester has an engagement beginning shortly, so I would ask that he deliver his introduction immediately following Senator Inhofe's opening statement. Now let me turn to the ranking member.
Thank you, Chairman Reed, and thanks to our witnesses for being with us and their willingness to serve, continue their service to the nation. As former Secretary of Defense and CIA Director Bob Gates has said recently, quote, "We have to think about how we are going to deal with a hostile Russia as long as Putin is around. We face a much longer-term kind of problem and challenge from the Chinese." I think these remarks put Russia and China into the right context. The 2018 National Defense Strategy book is one we've referred to many, many times over and over again, and it comes to light again with this panel. I think that we're going to have to continue using it as the roadmap as we have for the last several months. We continue to fall behind the Chinese, even as the threats worsen. We haven't seen resourcing the strategy adequately, and that was before we had all this inflation. We need a sense of urgency to make bold, smart decisions at the Department of Defense, and that starts with senior civilian leadership. We've got to take some risk. Congress is an eager and willing partner, but you got to ask us. We want to work with you. Dr. LaPlante, you've been nominated to be the DOD's top acquisition job. It's a shame it took a whole year because you've got a lot of catching up to do. Congress and the Pentagon working together have made huge strides in acquisition, but the Chinese are still moving faster than we are. We're still not very good at supporting rapid innovation, and we even struggle with the traditional acquisitions. Case in point is the Ford-class carrier. We are unable to develop a plan to resource it. We've seen half a dozen official positions on what the future naval fleet should look like, all larger than what we have today. Mr. Raven, I hope you'll help the Pentagon stop its endless bickering and support the Navy stated requirements and start building ships at scale. It's long overdue. Nuclear modernization is another overdue bill for the military. Dr. Adams, I hope you'll tell us how you'll work to take care of those bills as we also consider how the nuclear posture must change in response to the Chinese and the Russian nuclear advances. Lastly, the Congress has made a lot of major changes in the Uniform Code of Military Justice in recent years. The executive branch is also trying to implement a vaccine mandate and root out the extremism in our armed forces. Ms. Johnson, I'd like to hear how you turn to the Constitution first whenever considering the application of these efforts. And look forward to hear from each one of you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Inhofe. I'm going to recognize Senator Tester, but also then recognize the other individuals who are introducing the witnesses so that they may leave at their discretion. Let's begin with Senator Tester. Senator, please.
Well, good morning, and I want to thank you, Chairman Reed and Ranking Member Inhofe, and my friends on this committee for allowing me to speak here this morning. It is truly an honor to be introducing Erik Raven today at his nomination hearing to be Undersecretary for the Navy. It is an honor because there is no one more qualified or capable than Erik is to serve the men and women of our Navy. I know firsthand because Erik is the Democratic Staff Director for the Subcommittee on Defense of the Senate Committee on Appropriations, and for the last year, I have worked very, very closely with him in my role as chairman on that committee. In that time, we've spoken every day, something I know that Erik has enjoyed very much. Erik is a true professional. He is dedicated, He is whip smart, and he knows the defense budget better than anybody. But that's only part of what makes Erik qualified and deserving of being confirmed for this position at the Department of Defense. What makes Erik exceptional is that he deeply understands the challenges and the threats we face, and he has dedicated his life to our military, our national security, and to our country. For the last 24 years, Erik has served as a staff member for some of the giants of the Senate: Senator Dianne Feinstein, Senator Ted Kennedy, Senator Robert Byrd. You may have heard of them. Erik served as Senator Byrd's military and foreign affairs advisor from 2000 to 2007, and as his legislative director from 2006 to 2007. He also served as a speechwriter for Senator Byrd on national security matters. Some of you may not know this, but my office and heart is Senator Byrd's old office. And welcoming Erik back into that office after I became SAC-D chairman is a fitting symmetry to the end of his Hill career before he sails off to the Pentagon. But I'm not the only SAC-D chairman who has benefited from Erik's wisdom and leadership for the past 15 years, 7 as a professional staff member and 8 as staff director. Erik has served senators, the Senate, and our nation. As a staff director, he is the principal advisor to the Committee on Budgetary Matters relating to the Department of Defense and the national intelligence community. And during his time on the committee, Erik has been responsible for the oversight of national intelligence programs, national security space programs, special operations procurement, Army aviation, and Navy research and development matters, as well as staff lead on wartime intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance initiatives. Erik is as credentialed as his experience. He has completed a master's thesis on the origins of China's nuclear weapons program at the London School of Economics and Political Science, as well as an undergraduate honor thesis on the international narcotics trade at Connecticut College. This dude is a smart guy, and he has good people in his corner. I want to recognize his wife, Ann, who's here today, and thank you, Ann, for sharing Erik with the Senate, and soon, I hope, with the Department of Defense. The gratitude our country owes Erik for his service, we also owe to you. The bottom line is this: Erik Raven will serve as Undersecretary for the Navy honorably and well. He is exceptionally qualified and deserving of this committee's favorable endorsement, and I'm sure that the distinguished members of this committee will agree after getting a chance to question him. Erik, I just want to congratulate you on your nomination, and get in there and give him hell, okay? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Tester. Secretary Carter, please.
That microphone on? Yeah. Hi. Chairman Reed, Ranking Member Inhofe, all the members of the committee, thank you for giving me the opportunity to describe to you the qualities of Bill LaPlante and the qualities that he'll bring to the job of Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment. And thank you also for the opportunity of seeing you and in person after all this time. It's a wonderful treat. I first got to know Bill when I was on Don Rumsfeld's Defense Science Board, must have been 20 years ago or so, and Bill came and worked on one of the efforts that we were mounting at that time, and I and everybody else was impressed with Bill's engineering acumen, but also with his patriotism and his dedication to the work of the department. In the years thereafter, Bill went to APL, to MITRE, to Draper, some of our great institutions that serve the Department of Defense and the wider community from a technology point of view. And then he served when I was Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics and Deputy Secretary of Defense before I became Secretary of Defense as Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Acquisition, important job. And a few things to mention about that time that are relevant today. The first is that Bill was Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Acquisition at a time when we were still deeply involved in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I mention that only because it was very important to Bill then, and I observed this, that he do everything he could to make sure that our troops, our warfighters, and our NATO allies, for that matter, as well, got everything they needed every day. There wasn't the time to wait for the Pentagon paperwork when things were flying. And Bill remembered that. And so his heart was in it, and I admired his heart as well as his intellect. And he knew, and this is important and in connection with what Senator Inhofe said a moment ago, Bill knows how to make agility work in the Department of Defense and not wait for the Pentagon's paperwork to turn the crank. And we need that today because we need to work at the same pace as technology if we're to continue to be able to dominate our potential opponents, particularly China and Russia. And in that connection, yet another trait of Bill LaPlante is that Bill recognizes that the secret sauce of our superiority has been, since Sputnik, the ability of the Department of Defense to work closely with private enterprise and the private tech sector. The tech sector is now bigger than it used to be. It's bigger than our own tech sector, our government tech sector, by a wide margin. It's global, and the only way to stay the best, is, always like to say, Lyndon Johnson used to say, the firstest with the mostest is to have the best bridges between the government tech sector and the commercial tech sector. And Bill knows how to make that work. He showed that at APL and at Miter and Draper and in his job for the Air Force. Last thing I'd say about Bill is, you know, the Department of Defense works best when the Secretary of Defense's office works well with the military services. And Bill, having come out of the Air Force, one of the military services, and worked very, very well with me when I was acquisition executive and deputy Secretary of Defense, has shown that he can do that. Since the time I was Under Secretary for Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics, furthermore, that job has been divided into the Undersecretary for Acquisition and Sustainment on the one hand and the Undersecretary for Research and Engineering on the other. And it's important also that someone entering Bill's job be able to work across that boundary as well, because the boundary between product and research is the hardest boundary to bridge in technology programs. And Bill's longstanding relationship when she was Army Acquisition Executive with Heidi Shue, who's now the Undersecretary for Research and Engineering, that bodes well, as does Bill's acquaintance with the now Secretary and the now Deputy Secretary, all of whom he worked with earlier. So, Chairman, Ranking Member Inhofe, members of the committee, you got here a guy who is really very well qualified for this job. I hope you give Bill your speediest and most favorable consideration. I think he'll do a great job for us in a time when we need somebody who knows how to act fast, whether it be in connection with Ukraine and the resupply of the Ukrainian forces, whether it be with respect to fortifying our own NATO forces so that we can dominate any situation that Russia creates there, and with respect to China so that we can continue to be, in defense technology and defense in general, the firstest with the mostest on the whole planet. All of that hinges in part on the job that Bill will occupy, and he'll do us proud in that regard. So thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to be with you again.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for your comments, and thank you also for your service to the nation. Let me recognize Secretary Johnson.
Chairman Reed, Ranking Member Inhofe, members of this committee, I welcome the opportunity to come here to testify in support of the nomination of retired Colonel Tia Johnson to be a member of the Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces. I know Colonel Johnson to be an outstanding lawyer, an outstanding public servant, and an outstanding American. I have observed and worked with her in 5 different jobs. The record will reflect that she was and is a trailblazer She was the first black woman to reach the rank of full colonel in the Army JAG Corps. And if confirmed, she will be the first black woman on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces. But there is more to the nominee than that. Long before I became General Counsel of DOD or Secretary of DHS, in private law practice, I was chair of the Judiciary Committee of the New York City Bar Association, which evaluates all elected and appointed candidates for federal, state, and local judgeships in the city of New York. In 3 years, I personally interviewed 500 people who were candidates for judgeships, ranging from the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit to Housing Court, Kings County. I therefore think I know something about how to evaluate a judge. In my experience, wisdom is the best attribute of a good judge, and a wealth of life experiences is the best predictor of wisdom. In my time in national security, I don't think I've encountered a military lawyer with a broader range of experience than Colonel Johnson. Tia was an active duty soldier for 30 years. As a young JAG, she built a considerable track record as a first-chair prosecutor in military justice. I first met Colonel Johnson in 2009 when I was General Counsel of the Department of Defense and she was Staff Judge Advocate for U.S. Forces Korea, one of the most important legal assignments in the whole U.S. military. Next, I worked with Colonel Johnson when she came to the Pentagon, assigned to our DoD Office of Legislative Affairs. I was so impressed with Colonel Johnson in 2012, I hired her as my own senior military aide, where she was exposed to every conceivable legal issue the Department of Defense faces. Tia then followed me to the Department of Homeland Security, which she joined in 2014 as a senior advisor to the Director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Finally, on my recommendation, in 2015, Colonel Johnson was appointed by the President to be Assistant Secretary of DHS for Legislative Affairs. A big job. As you know, DHS has more than a few congressional committees of oversight. The task of sitting in judgment of others is not an easy one. Tia Johnson comes before you as a nominee rich in life experiences and therefore well-equipped to take on this difficult task. I urge that she be confirmed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary, and again, thank you for your distinguished service to the country. Ambassador Brooks, please.
Chairman Reed, Senator Inhofe, members of this committee. I'm honored to introduce Dr. Marvin Adams. I was privileged to be confirmed by this committee twice during the George W. Bush administration for jobs within NNSA, and I know how seriously this committee takes its responsibilities. In my view, Dr. Adams is the perfect candidate for this important job at this crucial time. First, Dr. Adams has superb technical background for leading a complex technical organization like Defense Programs. He understands stockpile stewardship as well as anyone I know. When the country needs high-quality, objective science and technical advice, it often turns to the Jason's Advisory Group. In his 15 years on that group, Dr. Adams has been involved in over 20 major studies of nuclear weapons activities for both DoD and NNSA, serving as director of most. Time and time again, when the country requires strong technical advice, it turns to groups led by Dr. Adams. Second, the greatest near-term challenge facing NNSA is to meet the Department of Defense requirements for delivering nuclear weapons on schedule. Dr. Adams is committed to a strong nuclear deterrent, and he brings a unique perspective as an advisor to the commander of the U.S. Strategic Command, who helps establish our national requirements. Third, in the long term, NNSA must become more flexible in responding to the rapidly changing international environment in a world in which the United States must deal with two near-peer competitors. NSA Administrator Hruby is working on this but needs Dr. Adams to help. NNSA is made up of dedicated career civil servants. I was proud to lead them, and the committee should be proud that America produces such exceptional individuals. Over time, however, they have become used to a system that values detailed certainty over responsiveness. Dr. Adams is exactly the right person to help bring defense programs into conformity with the needs of today's world. Finally, if Dr. Adams is confirmed, he will be leading a large, complex organization. Leadership is not quite the same thing as management. He will have strong support in the day-to-day management responsibilities he's assuming, but only he can set the vision and inspire his organization to evolve to meet today's requirements. Here, Dr. Adams will be superb. It is not an accident that in the many studies he mentions, he is usually the one put in charge. He is a natural leader. If I were technically qualified and a little younger, I would work for him in a heartbeat. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce such an outstanding public servant. I am confident that if confirmed, Marv Adams will bring distinction to his new responsibilities, and I urge the committee and the Senate to support his confirmation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ambassador Brooks, for your comments, but again, for your service to the nation. Deeply appreciated. Now let me recognize Dr. LaPlante for his opening statement. Dr. LaPlante, please.
Yes, good morning, Chairman Reed, Ranking Member Inhofe, and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be before you today and for consideration of my nomination to be the Undersecretary for Acquisition and Sustainment. I'm honored by the trust and confidence as well shown by President Biden and Secretary Austin and me. First, I'd like to begin by thanking the committee for all the work you're doing and how important the work you do every day is, given, of course, the times we're in right now, including the situation in Ukraine. The work the committee has done day in, day out, year in, year out for the past 61 years, this bipartisan work is so important for the country, and thank you for what you do. I would also like a moment to thank some of the many people who have shaped my life and career, without whom I wouldn't be here today. That list begins with my family. My brother Frank and my sister Kathy are here today, but my parents and siblings, who always impressed upon me the value and imperative of public service. It includes my wife Joanne, our kids Claire and Caroline, who have been steadfast in their love, and many of them are all watching this around the country right now today. I've also benefited tremendously from the mentorship of many in the National Security Committee, not the least of which was Secretary Ash Carter, but also Secretary Frank Kendall, Dr. John Hamre, Secretary Debbie James, Frank Miller, David Shedd, Lisa Disbrow, Dr. Paul Kaminsky, and Dr. Craig Fields, just to name a few. The mission of delivering and sustaining timely, cost-effective, and uncompromised capabilities for the armed forces is never more relevant than it is today. We see it every day in the news. China is our pacing threat, but of course we also have the increasingly belligerent and aggressive behavior by Russia, as well as malign actors and other existential threats. If confirmed, my service as the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment would be the culmination of over 36 years in national security technology and in the nonprofit community. I also served as the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Acquisition, as a member of the Defense Science Board, and as a member of the Section 809 Commission, which was chartered to reform and speed up acquisition. Looking forward, the defense acquisition system must be focused laser-like on delivering capability that meets the needs, both current and future, of the warfighter forces at speed, at scale. Our troops must have what they need to confront and overcome a rapidly evolving challenges, not just a threat, but as Secretary Carter said, technology changing. We'll do this by transitioning emerging technologies, whether it's quantum sensing, hypersonics, artificial intelligence, autonomy, directed energy. All of these kind of technologies, we need to get them into our systems and out to our forces so that the troops have what they need to confront and overcome the threat. We must improve our ability to acquire software and do software-intensive systems. That's going to be the key to agility and speed in the future. We must sustain our fielded weapon systems in a cost-effective manner. We must strengthen the defense industrial base, including our supply chains, and tap the innovation of the private sector by lowering barriers to doing business with the DoD or the government for small businesses, non-traditional commercial firms, or startups. And we must empower and enable the dedicated professionals who comprise the defense acquisition workforce. If confirmed, I strive to accomplish these and other priorities as determined by the Secretary of Defense and the Deputy Secretary of Defense. And I will devote myself to this critical mission. In all that I do, I pledge to work closely and transparently with this committee and with the Congress. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. LaPlante. Mr. Raven, please.
Chairman Reed, Ranking Member Inhofe, and distinguished members of this committee, it is my pleasure to appear before you this morning. First, I wish to thank President Biden, Secretary Austin, Deputy Secretary Hicks, and Secretary Del Toro. I am honored to receive the nomination to serve as Undersecretary of the Navy, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to continue to serve our nation. Senator Tester, thank you for those kind words of introduction and all of your support. If confirmed to this position, I look forward to continuing our conversations on your plans to make Montana into a center of naval power. Finally, to my wife, Anne, and our son, Edward, I could not be here without your support. We have tackled the ups and downs of my work in public service together as a family. As I hope to embark on this new challenge, I am thankful for your willingness to take this journey with me. Mr. Chairman, the partnership of the United States Navy and the United States Marine Corps constitutes the world's greatest naval military force. Together, their exquisite capabilities deter aggression, deepen our ties with allies and partners, and when necessary, respond to crises around the globe. We are a maritime nation, and the capabilities of our naval forces are directly related to the security, prosperity, and the future of the United States. If confirmed to be Undersecretary of the Navy, I would be responsible for assisting the Secretary of the Navy in carrying out his duty to recruit, train, and equip the Navy and Marine Corps to meet the security challenges of our era. To carry out these tasks, first and foremost, I would be an advocate for the Department of the Navy, especially for the 620,000 sailors and Marines and the 220,000 civilians who serve side by side today. I believe that people must be the top priority of the Department of the Navy. This means recruiting the right talent for the challenges that lay ahead. It means growing new generations of leaders to secure and instill excellence at all levels. And it means ensuring fair treatment for all those who serve. I also believe that modernization of the Navy and Marine Corps is a strategic imperative. I wish to leverage my 15 years of experience on the Senate Defense Appropriations Subcommittee to maximize the power of every dollar that Congress provides. This means identifying the capabilities that are needed, setting a plan for acquiring them, and working with partners in industry to deliver them efficiently. The need to modernize applies not only to major platforms and breakthrough technologies like hypersonic missiles and artificial intelligence. It also applies to facilities and infrastructure that generate readiness for Navy and Marine Corps forces. I appreciate the hard work and leadership of this committee across these many issues. You have worked to provide the Department of the Navy with direction and tools to address these challenges and have pushed the department to show results. If confirmed, I will work with this committee in partnership to achieve what is needed. Mr. Chairman, I place great emphasis on partnerships. I view the position of Undersecretary of the Navy as a means to build key partnerships across many groups: service members and civilians, the department and industry, bases and communities, and of course, across the joint force. This brings me back to where I began. The Navy and Marine Corps together constitute the world's greatest naval force. I would be honored to help lead the Department of the Navy to continue this history of excellence. And again, thank you for this opportunity to appear before the committee, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Raven. Ms. Johnson, please.
Secretary Johnson broke it. There we go. Thank you. Chairman Reed, Ranking Member Inhofe, distinguished members of the committee, thank you for inviting me here today to consider my nomination to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces. I'd also like to thank Secretary Austin and the President for their expression of confidence in me. If confirmed, I will do my best to live up to their trust. Joining me today is my husband, Al Phillips. I thank him for his enduring love and support. A career Army officer himself, his sacrifice did not end when he took off his uniform. Instead, he selflessly shared me with the Army. I was deployed within 3 months of being married and ended up being gone 18 months. Little did we know that it would be the first of many separations. Those experiences keep me mindful of the service and sacrifice of our men and women in uniform. They deserve nothing less than a military justice system that is strong, fair, and full of integrity. We both inherited a lifestyle of service. My in-laws were educators who started their careers teaching in segregated schools in the South, but they persevered. My father was a Marine in World War II who fought and was injured in the Pacific. Like many, he used his GI benefits to attend college and graduate school. As a child psychologist, he dedicated his life to advancing the educational needs of special needs children. My mother, who could not be here with us today, is 94 years old. She went to college as an adult, returning to the public schools as a reading instructor. From them, I learned the importance of honesty, hard work, perseverance, believing and working for something larger than yourself. Secretary Johnson stated that I possess wisdom. I think that's just the result of those combined traits. I carried all those traits and values with me through 32 years of government service, 30 of those in uniform. I served with soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines around the world in garrison, contingency operations, and in combat zones. And every day, I saw how exceptional the members of the armed forces are. But as a judge advocate, I also advise commanders regarding service member misconduct. These experiences reinforce the importance of balancing the need for good order and discipline with protecting the rights of service members. Congress also understood that need, and in 1950 reformed the military justice system by enacting the Uniform Code of Military Justice to ensure the service members enjoy, to the extent possible given the unique nature of military service, the same constitutional and legal protections as civilians. At the same time, they established the Court of Military Appeals, now the Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces, as a specialized, independent appellate court to review courts-martials and provide civilian oversight of the military justice system. The Supreme Court has validated the system Congress created by noting that the military justice system's essential character is judicial, and that CAF, sitting atop this system, functions like other courts of appeals, both federal and state. I view this opportunity to serve on the court as the privilege and honor of a lifetime. And if confirmed, I will continue the tradition of professionalism and independence recognized by the U.S. Supreme Court. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Johnson. Dr. Adams, please.
Thank you, Chairman Reed, Ranking Member Inhofe, and distinguished members of the committee. I'm honored to be nominated for the role of Deputy Administrator for Defense Programs in the NNSA. This is a critical time for the organization as it strives to deliver on important commitments while at the same time rebuilding infrastructure, restoring lost capabilities, and developing the expertise and technologies that will be needed for future challenges. If confirmed, I will do my best to justify the confidence that President Biden, Secretary Granholm, and Administrator Ruby have placed in me through this nomination. I thank Ambassador Brooks for his kind introduction. I have learned a lot from Linton Brooks over the years, and I continue to benefit greatly from his mentoring. My wife, Jenny, is unable to be here in Washington today. She and many friends and family members are watching remotely. I thank them in advance for the love, support, and encouragement that I know will sustain me if I'm confirmed into this new role. I especially thank Jenny, my partner and companion for the last 43 years of the roller coaster ride from a small high school in rural Mississippi to this seat in front of you, for accepting the sacrifices that we must make if we take on this new service role upon confirmation. I've been engaged in the U.S. nuclear weapons program since I started my career at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory in 1986. In 3 decades at Texas A&M University, I have spent a substantial fraction of my time serving U.S. national security efforts with a focus on the nuclear deterrent. For example, as a member of the Jason Defense Advisory Group, I've participated in more than 20 in-depth studies related to nuclear weapons issues, concerns, and activities, including studies sponsored by DoD as well as NNSA. I've been chosen as study leader for most of those. The NNSA, the National Security Laboratories, the National Academies, and other organizations have repeatedly called on me for reviews and advice related to nuclear weapons. In the past 4 decades, much of my research has been funded by the Stockpile Stewardship Program or similar programs, and the results of my research have been applied to challenging stewardship problems. In recent years, I've chaired the Los Alamos Mission Committee, whose purview includes plutonium pit production, in addition to all other weapons activities. This has required knowledge of weapons design and assessment activities, warhead delivery schedules and mandates, activities that coordinate with Pantex, Y-12, the Kansas City National Security Campus, the Nevada National Security Site, and Savannah River, as well as coordination with Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory and Sandia National Laboratory. It has required knowledge of the management of large capital projects, knowledge of supply chain issues, the science and engineering challenges of producing specialized components such as plutonium pits, while meeting stringent requirements for quality, safety, and security. I have viewed NNSA from the DoD perspective, for example, as a member of the Stockpile Assessment Team, which is part of the Strategic Advisory Group for STRATCOM. These and other activities have led me to understand the broad portfolio of activities and tasks needed to maintain and enable the safety, reliability, and effectiveness of the U.S. nuclear weapons stockpile. I understand what it takes to build and maintain the unique capabilities that defense programs must employ to design, assess, transport, surveil, dismantle, and manufacture nuclear warheads. I understand the importance of delivering on commitments and meeting military requirements. If I am confirmed, my top priorities will be to maintain the safety, security, and effectiveness of the current stockpile, as well as to deliver on commitments for stockpile modernization. The latter requires development and deployment of more agile infrastructure, including plutonium pit manufacturing capabilities, and construction of essential infrastructure. While focusing on these priorities, I will also work to develop and nurture the capabilities for future challenges. NNSA cannot meet these challenges by itself. I'm grateful for the support that Congress, past administrations, and the current administration have provided for rebuilding essential capabilities and infrastructure. NNSA partnership with DoD is critical, given their joint responsibilities for the deterrent. If confirmed, I commit to working cooperatively with this committee, other congressional stakeholders, and DoD to ensure that the nation's nuclear deterrent continues to be safe, secure, and effective. Thank you for your consideration of my nomination. It is an honor to appear before this committee, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Adams. I have a series of questions which are asked of all nominees. You may respond in unison. Have you adhered to applicable laws and regulations governing conflicts of interest?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Have you assumed any duties or taken any actions that would appear to presume the outcome of the confirmation process?
No.
No.
Exercising our legislative and oversight responsibilities makes it important that this committee its subcommittees, and other appropriate committees of Congress receive testimony, briefings, reports, records, and other information from the executive branch on a timely basis. Do you agree, if confirmed, to appear and testify before this committee when requested?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you agree to provide records, documents, and electronic communications in a timely manner when requested by this committee, its subcommittees, or other appropriate committees of Congress, and to consult with the requester regarding the basis for any good faith delay or denial in providing such records?
Yes.
Yes.
Will you ensure that your staff complies with deadlines established by this committee for the production of reports, records, and other information, including timely reporting to hearing questions for the record and responding to them?
Yes.
Yes.
Will you cooperate in providing witnesses and briefers in response to congressional requests?
Yes.
Yes.
Will those witnesses and briefers be protected from reprisal for their testimony or briefings?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Dr. LaPlante, we are at a historic turning point, and the question is, will this and will we emerge more secure or, frankly, less secure? And part of the manifestation of that is the fight in Ukraine right now, which has Russia against the very valiant Ukrainian people, but there is a possibility of escalation that could be very dangerous. We're a situation where we have technological improvements. We used to dominate technology. That's no longer the case. Hypersonics, clearly China and indeed Russia have advantages on us. And finally, we're about to emerge for the first time in the history of the world in a trilateral nuclear competition, no longer bilateral. The Soviet Union, the United States, no, it's China, Russia, and the United States. With those thoughts, what are the first several practical steps you intend to take to get us to address these issues?
Senator. First, to start out with, of course, you bring up the Ukraine and just our heart breaks, and we see every day the refugees and the human toll from this Russian aggression. And if confirmed, one of my first things to do on day one be accelerate all equipment and capabilities to both the Ukrainians, as we agreed to and also helping our NATO partners and replenish our stockpiles. The second priority I hope to begin with immediately is accelerate getting into our mainstream weapon systems, these new technologies that you talked about. We do have a lot of initiatives over the last several years, thanks to this committee, using new authorities to rapidly contract and to do prototypes. I think that's very good. We got to get those capabilities rapidly into the weapon systems, and it would sometimes bridge what they call the valley of death. So I pledge to work with the program offices to make it their job to do continuous upgrades of technology so we can get back into this race that you talked about. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. LaPlante. Mr. Raven, we all talk about the number of ships, and that's an interesting and admirable discussion, but if those ships can't leave the ports because they need repairs and we have limited shipyard capacity, we have a problem. In fact, in last year's National Defense Authorization Act, we directed the Navy to investigate options for increasing ship repair capacity. If you're confirmed, can you give us assurances you'll get right on this and get it done?
Mr. Chairman, absolutely. Let me also say that the availability of ships is key to the future, the forward presence of our Navy and Marine Corps forces that help deter aggression, and so making sure that those resources are available to support deployments is a key warfighting goal.
Thank you very much. Ms. Johnson, you have an extraordinary career, and I concur with Secretary Johnson in his assessment. But can you give us a brief overview of the strengths and weaknesses of the military justice system, including the fairness and effectiveness of the system?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that the greatest strength was just recently ratified by the Supreme Court in the Ortiz versus United States, wherein they held that the essential character of the military justice system is judicial, and that the Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces operates on par with other courts of appeals, both federal and state. And so the legitimacy of the system is its greatest strength. For individual rights, It's the Article 31 rights against self-incrimination that vest earlier in the military context than they do in the civilian. Similarly, the rights to counsel, which are not dependent upon indigency, but everyone has the right to counsel under our system. Some of the weaknesses may be the perception of people somehow stacked against them. But that comes into the fairness and the equity of the system, and that we must ensure that there's integrity in the process at each stage, everywhere along that line, and having the Court of Appeals as a civilian oversight of that system helps to ensure that.
Just very quickly, Ms. Johnson, you do recognize the importance of the administrative system of punishment under Article 15 as a critical aspect of the military justice system?
Yes, Chairman, I recognize that.
Thank you very much. Dr. Adams, very quickly, you have this tension, DOD requirements and core scientific capabilities. Sometimes they correspond, other times they diverge. How will you try to reconcile those?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for bringing up that tension. It's a real one. It's one that the Deputy Administrator has to manage. I will exercise judgment on that. We can't eat our seed corn while at the same, we have short-term needs that are very pressing, but we can't lose sight on a long-term picture either, and we have to continue to develop those science and technology capabilities that will meet our future challenges.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Senator Inhofe, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, Mr. Chairman, you point out something that we don't like, and that is that, and I can say this since I think I'm the oldest one in this room, but I can remember when it was unquestionable that we in the United States had the best of everything. And we don't anymore. And as you pointed out in your opening statement, this is something that we regret, but it is a reality. We know that our munition stocks are too low in priority theaters. We don't have the capacity to produce enough munitions and ammo in the time frame that we've allotted. This is a key challenge to both deterrence and protraction of warfighting scenarios. For example, we're sending thousands of Stingers to Ukraine, and we don't even have a hot production line. So, Dr. LaPlante, this is something that we unfortunately have to be recognize and be used to. Let me just ask you the first question. Do we need to make some one-time investments this year so we can expand production of key munitions?
Question, Mr. Senator. Yes, we do. I believe, and Senator, you said the words hot production lines. I believe we need multiple hot production lines, whether it's be munitions, UASs, and the like. They by themselves are a deterrent, and we need to put much more focus on that across the board.
Yeah. Well, I thank you very much, and I think I mentioned in my opening remarks the USS Gerald Ford. In many ways, this is a classical example of what not to do. From the beginning, this new carrier had unrealistic cost and schedule estimates that failed to account for the risks associated with the ship's construction. At the same time, there is a well-founded sense of urgency to develop and field new systems faster. Where do you think we should be innovative, faster, and taking on more risk? And where do we need to have more rigor in our analysis?
Yes, Senator, I would say this. What we learned the lesson from both Ford, and we'd like to think we learned a lesson from F-35, that you have to have mature technologies and you have to be thoughtful in the design and you have to adhere to independent cost estimates right from the beginning. It takes a little bit of time at the beginning, saves a lot of trouble later. But to get innovation, what you have to do is we have to build the modular open systems like we did for the B-21. And so once you have the open system, then we can be upgrading with technology very fast. And the technology that matures will earn its way on, and you have continuous upgrades. It can be done.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, I appreciate that very much. Mr. Raven, the Navy's budget, maintenance, and infrastructure and personnel levels are inadequate to maintain the current fleet of approximately 295 ships, much less a fleet of at least 355 that we've been talking about that Congress has challenged us with. Do you agree that based on the threats that we face as a nation, the Navy needs to grow in both capacity and capability?
Senator, thank you for that question. If confirmed to this position, let me first say that you can count on me to be an advocate for Navy Marine Corps capabilities. In terms of
I'm fully aware of that.
If you look at warfighting capabilities across the Joint Force, I think there's several pillars that all have to work together. That's modernization, that's sustainment, that's manpower, that's readiness, and all of these have to come together to make that combat credible force that would deter our adversaries. So if confirmed, I look forward to getting to the bottom of each of those pillars of readiness and working with this committee to address them.
That's good. And what I'd like to ask you to do is just take the next 2 or 3 days and for the record, not this morning, but for the record, what specific steps would you support to grow the fleet in terms of capability, capacity, and maintenance and personnel? Not this morning, but the next 2 or 3 days.
Happy to, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Inhofe. Let me recognize Senator King, please. Oh, excuse me. Senator Warren has just arrived. Are you ready, Senator Warren? Is that a maybe? Senator Warren.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank all the nominees for being here today. And Dr. Adams, if I can, I'd like to start with you. You're nominated to oversee nuclear weapons program for NNSA, which puts you in charge of projects that are complex and dangerous and also very, very, very expensive. I've been a critic of some of NNSA's work because of the agency's record of waste and mismanagement that has cost taxpayers billions of dollars over the years. So I want to ask you about one of these pricey projects that isn't going very well. We're modernizing our nuclear weapons program, and that includes producing new plutonium pits, which make radioactive raw material that we need for nuclear weapons. In 2015, Congress set a requirement to produce 80 pits per year by 2030, a big increase from our previous level of no more than 20 pits a year that we had been able to produce. Dr. Adams, will we reach 80 pits per year by 2030?
Thank you for that important question, Senator. The current estimates by NNSA are that we will not reach 80 pits per year by 2030.
Yeah. So I understand these are complex projects and the original estimates may have been off, but I'm deeply concerned that we're not even sure how much increased pit production is going to cost us. The estimated budget for this work at just one pit production site doubled over the course of just a couple of months. We've thrown money at this problem, but the head of Strategic Command recently told this committee, quote, even unlimited money, unquote, will not get us to 80 pits a year. Dr. Adams, do you agree with Strategic Command that the problem facing pit production can't be solved by just throwing more money at it?
Thank you, Senator. I agree that we can't get to 2030 just by throwing more money at it. Get to 80 by 2030 by just throwing more money at it.
Okay, well, it's clear to me there are a lot of reasons that pit production isn't meeting the goals, including that the goals may not be sustainable. But lack of funding is not one of the problems. Admiral Richard is a big supporter of more pit production, so if even he says more money won't fix this, then obviously we need to rethink our approach. So Dr. Adams, if confirmed, will you review the current pit production plan and advise this committee on what would be a more sustainable and achievable path?
I certainly will, Senator.
I'm glad to hear that, because I think that sticking to the current plan just defies common sense. It is unfathomable to me that NNSA would not reconsider the plan, and I hope that you will give this issue a serious look if you're confirmed. It's no secret that I think that our nuclear weapons policy is dangerous and unsustainable. But even those who want these weapons to occupy a more prominent role in our national security should be able to agree that continuing to waste billions of dollars in pursuit of an unachievable goal makes us not more safe, it makes us less safe. So I hope that the upcoming nuclear posture review gives the President real options to reduce nuclear weapons spending, including a path to scale back NNSA's modernization plans. We're going to spend more than $630 billion over the next 10 years, and that spending is only going to rise if we double down on plans that we know will not succeed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield.
Thank you, Senator Warren. Senator Cotton, please.
Thank you all. Congratulations on your nominations. Mr. LaPlante, I'd like to say that I am worried about the continued overclassification, you might even say hyperclassification at the Department of Defense. It seems like a majority of new programs get special access program classification, which makes oversight by the committees and our staffs harder. The classified program budget lines in the most recent omnibus bill were over 20% of the procurement budget. And once we get these great capabilities, there's often not a great way to test or train on them. I'm reminded of what Bob Gates, the former director of the CIA, said, that he had security clearances that he didn't know existed for programs he couldn't remember ever being briefed on. If confirmed, can you commit that you'll only use the special access program classification for a truly exquisite capability?
And I'd be happy to follow up with you, but absolutely I commit to it, to reviewing that classification at all levels and whether things are overclassified. Absolutely.
Thank you. I've got to say, I'm on this committee and the Intelligence Committee, and I try to do a good job of staying on top of everything, but sometimes I feel like Bob Gates. Mr. Raven, earlier this year, several members of Congress commissioned a report about the culture of the United States Navy, especially the surface Navy. Have you read the report that we commissioned?
Yes, I have, Senator.
Do you have any thoughts on it?
Senator, I think the study showed that warfighting capability is the #1 mission of the Navy and Marine Corps, and if confirmed, I intend to support that goal of increasing Navy and Marine Corps warfighting capabilities.
Thank you. I think this is mostly a Navy culture and leadership problem, not just today's Navy, but going back 20 years. Congress and this committee has some responsibility, I would say, as well. But it's really something that needs to be driven inside the Navy. I mean, the Navy has lost a capital warship on average once a year for the last 5 years. It can explain why this is and why that case happened and how this one's different. But in the end, it's like Bill Parcells said, you are what your record says you are. And I think that the Navy has underinvested in surface warfare training for a couple decades, trying to turn that around. I know the Secretary is trying to turn it around as well. But maybe can I get your commitment to come report back to me after about 100 days or so on what you've seen, if you're confirmed on the job about this issue?
Absolutely, Senator. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Johnson, how many criminal cases have you tried in your history as a lawyer?
Military justice and civilian cases combined, it would be over 2,000.
Criminal cases?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. If you're confirmed, do you view your career in the military as an asset in the court's primary role of providing civilian oversight to the military justice system?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, I do consider my experience as an asset. One, it'll aid in the understanding of some of the issues and also understanding the processes. And so as Secretary Johnson noted, experience ties into wisdom. And so I do think that 30 years of experience in uniform will be an added benefit.
Let me ask you this, because this is nothing against you and your great years of experience as well. I do have concerns about the direction the court has taken in recent years. In 2014, the Congress allowed retirees to join the court after a cooling off period. Going back to 1991, it had been required that you couldn't be a retiree. Could serve, but not have been a retiree. And I think the point of that was that this is civilian oversight to the military justice system. And if a lance corporal or a private sees, a retired colonel or flag officer who made their life in the military justice system, they may view them as part of the system. Do you have a concern that if you're confirmed, I believe a majority of the active judges will be retirees from the system, either active or reserves, and whether or not litigants in front of your court are going to perceive that they're going to get a fair shake? Again, this is not about you in particular. You would be one of three, and there have been others in the past as well. It's just a concern I have about the direction of the court.
Senator, I understand your concern, and I think that as a retiree, if confirmed, I'm sitting on the bench, I will be sitting there as a judge, judging the facts before me, applying the law as applicable, but that if a situation arose, as we had last term in the Bagani case, that could cause a conflict, I, like Judge Sparks, would carefully review that, and if I felt that I needed to recuse, I would in fact recuse myself.
Well, thank you for that commitment, and I do think it's important that we be mindful of it, and I think it may be even something the committee needs to review. It's akin to the waivers we gave to Secretary Mattis and Secretary Austin. I think those are ill-advised. I voted for one Secretary Mattis. I regret that. Not anything particular about him. I think civilian oversight, though, of the department is very important, whether it's at the Secretary level or at the Court of Appeals. Again, nothing about your distinguished record of service, but I think it's something the committee needs to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cotton. Senator Kelly, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of our witnesses today. Dr. LaPlante, this question is, I'm going to start with you. In the face of growing and changing threats from our adversaries, the Department of Defense continues to struggle with rapidly adopting emerging technologies that can transform the next generation of military capabilities. It's clear to many of us that the edge in future warfare will belong to nations that effectively modernize their capabilities by harnessing disruptive technologies like AI, cyber, quantum computing, and advanced microelectronics to upgrade and adapt their way of fighting. At the same time, we have budgetary overruns and bureaucratic challenges. While I have supported bipartisan efforts to develop new technologies, I also know that we can't spend our way out of these challenges. We need to spend smarter and find better ways to quickly advance development and the fielding of these game-changing technologies. Around the country, there are innovative ecosystems working to enhance our capabilities. Arizona is such a place. It's home to several of our military's key testing and training ranges, which play a unique and important role in supporting the joint force and supporting aerospace and defense industry leaders that are developing solutions that help us maintain an advantage on the battlefield. In the heart of it all, Arizona State University is uniquely suited to translate new technologies to meet current and future DoD challenges with its robust technical capabilities and extensive innovation ecosystem in partnership with DoD industry and venture capital firms. So, Dr. LaPlante, I know that you have a solid background and understanding of the industry and the emergent threats that we face. If confirmed to lead acquisition and sustainment, what will you do to strengthen the support of these innovation accelerators so these ecosystems can more rapidly transition new technology into field deployable solutions?
Thank you for the question, Senator. What you talked about a regional ecosystem in Arizona, as you point out, that is the future. There are several of these ecosystems all over the country. I'm actually on the board of a nonprofit of an advanced manufacturing institute in Michigan that is transforming how new manufacturing and engineering techniques are being used. And a lot of these regional associations, as you just pointed out, have strong ties to academia. I think what I would do, what I plan to do, if confirmed, is really accelerate these public-private partnerships that are happening around the country and make sure that we are out there explaining our problems to industry and academia, and also showing them, hey, there's hope. If we fund you, we're not just funding you for your prototype, but you can have a line of business. If it's successful, we'll get it into a production line. I think that last piece is what's been missing.
Well, thank you. Mr. Raven, I'm going to transition to something that's kind of on the other end of the spectrum with technology and is more about moving stuff. So I'm a graduate of the United States Merchant Marine Academy, and I've been very concerned about the decline witnessed in our merchant marine over the last 50 years even. In fact, I'm focused on our merchant marine because I believe not doing so puts our military and our nation at a strategic disadvantage, particularly as our military pivots to great power competition with China especially, a nation that's putting significant resources into modernizing its fleet and conducting a growing number of naval operations and maritime activity in more distant waters. So, Mr. Raven, what priority should the Navy be placing on our military sea lift capabilities in light of the pivot to great power competition?
Senator, those capabilities are key to our warfighting capability. Being able to sustain forces that are forward deployed, whether it's material, fuel, or other capabilities, is at the heart of that. I'm encouraged by the Navy's recent efforts to look at commercial vessels to leverage that capability, but if confirmed, I pledge to take a top-to-bottom look at those capabilities and consult back with you.
Well, I hope you work with our office, because right now, you say take a look at commercial vessels. So the Chinese have a merchant fleet of about 5,500 ocean-going merchant ships. We have about 85, I think the number is. So we are greatly outmatched, and a big conflict at sea often results in some losses, and it wouldn't take much time before we are at a strategic disadvantage, and we're not going to be able to resupply our troops. So thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Kelly. Senator King, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. LaPlante, one thing I want to emphasize, and I like your views, unlike in past practices in terms of procurement, everything we procure, we must think of from the perspective of the cyber risk. Part of your title is acquisition and sustainment, and whatever we acquire isn't sustainable if it's subject to cyber attack. Your views on that as a part of, an essential part of the acquisition process?
Yes, Senator, I appreciate the question, and you're absolutely right. In fact, there's a concept that was introduced a few years ago. I was part of this work at MITRE called Deliver Uncompromised, where the whole premise is you've got to deliver the parts and the capabilities uncompromised. Don't bake in cybersecurity later. And a not cyber-secure force is not a cyber-ready force. So what I plan to do, if confirmed, is check on the cyber status across the major programs that we have, including red teams, including making sure there's constant mitigation going on to the cyber threat. It requires continuous education, continuous engagement with industry. Every day the threat changes, but it is the cyber resiliency. Our weapon systems have to be able to fight through cyber just like any other enemy effect.
I appreciate that, and I like hearing the term red teams. I think every product should be red teamed and tested for cyber security before accepted into the fleet, if you will. One of the things I've observed as we're talking through these issues with military personnel is that speed is of the essence. Technology is developing so fast that we can't afford to wait months and years and decades for the development of new technologies. Technology often decides the outcome of the battle, and I hope that that's an emphasis. One thing that I've observed is that we tend to be risk averse, and we say that we won't run a test unless we're sure it's going to pass. Our adversaries have a different philosophy. They test and test and test and fail and fail and fail and learn every time, and end up beating us in terms of issues like hypersonics and other directed energy, for example.
Yes, I agree. A failed test is one where you don't learn. And one has to continue to do testing, to your point. We tested in 2010, 2011, a combined DARPA Air Force experiment to fly in a hypersonic glide vehicle from Vandenberg Air Force Base to Kwajalein. The two tests, they both failed, and the United States stopped hypersonic glide vehicle work. China and Russia just kept going. And so you have to test, you have to learn from the tests, and just keep going.
And you have to accept failure as a test, that's why it's called a test.
It's how you learn.
You mentioned something that I think is very important, and that is modularity in acquisitions, particularly of complex platforms, so that they can be upgraded quickly without having to redesign the whole platform. The B-21, I think, is an example of that. That, I take it, is going to be part of your philosophy moving forward in acquisition?
Yes, Senator, it is. In fact, we've known about modular systems for 20 to 30 years. We need to get them into all of our new systems and put it in the RFP. You mentioned the B-21. That was designed with an open standard right from the beginning, such that continuous technology can be upgraded for the next decades to come. That should be on all of our systems.
Two other quick questions on acquisition. One is, I believe we need to be more cognizant of the advantages of off-the-shelf technology or technology that's been developed somewhere else in the world that we can adapt. We don't have to start from scratch on everything. If Senator Tillis were here, he'd probably have his foot-high spec for a handgun, special handgun for the military as opposed to the handguns that are available. Finally, I believe that an essential part of the acquisition process today has to be the intellectual property so that we can then additive manufacture the parts. My vision is a 3D printer on every ship, every depot, every base, so that we don't have to wait for a valve from the OEM or from the supply chain. We can print it on site, and that's a readiness question.
Yes, Senator. We have too many places in the system where the OEM has vendor lock, and we're tied into that OEM decades later when we could bring in competition if we had the intellectual property on the part, as you point out.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, Senator King. And we'll take the opportunity to ask several questions. I'm informed that several of our colleagues are finishing up a Commerce Committee hearing and will join us shortly. But Dr. LaPlante, one of the current issues we have is the defense industrial base. Several factors I've observed. One is there's been a massive consolidation of the defense industrial base so that several different competitors no longer exist, and so ideas aren't as forthcoming, and that affects price in addition. Also, when you get down to the subcontracting level, you have issues of quality and also the perennial issue of cyber. In undersea warfare, we've provided resources for that industrial base to begin to look down at their subcontractors. But can you just generally characterize what the challenges are with the industrial base?
Yes, Senator. To start with, as you pointed out, the consolidation. I think, Senator, we've all seen the charts going back to the 90s where you had the Last Supper and then all these defense companies, and it's just whittled down to where we are today. Now, why is that not good? Because we need competition. Why do we need competition? Because that's how you drive innovation and speed. So it's very, very important that we have a robust and healthy industrial base. As far as the suppliers go, I think we need to continue to put pressure on the primes to know their supply chain, know it 3 or 4 tiers down. One of the challenges there is a legal term called contract privity, where sometimes the prime is not allowed to know maybe 3rd or 4th levels down. There are ways around that. There are tools that you can use using open source software as well as AI to really make the primes understand their subs and know where their critical failures and critical point of failures are.
Well, thank you very much. Mr. Raven, the Navy is still striving, as so many elements in the Department of Defense, to achieve a clean audit opinion. Can you tell us how you might be able to accelerate that process and get to the clean audit?
Yes, Senator. Auditability is a very key component, not only for accountability of how the government spends taxpayer funds, but also efficiency within an organization. And so I understand that the Marine Corps is closing in on a clean audit within the next couple of years. I want to understand where they've made progress and also take a closer look at where the Navy is and what obstacles there are to achieving that clean audit. And again, I thank the committee for its leadership in emphasizing the need to get to a clean audit.
Thank you very much. Ms. Johnson, one of the issues that is perennial with respect to the Uniform Code of Justice and the military justice system in general is the issue of unlawful command influence. And how well do you think the military is doing in eliminating that? And what would be the role of your court in dealing with that issue?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I totally understand your concern about that issue. We all should be concerned about it. You know, as the Supreme Court has said, the military justice system is protected by the Fifth Amendment Due Process Clause. And so those would be the type of analysis that we'd have to take if we saw unlawful command influence in a case. Additionally, Article 37 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice prohibits unlawful command influence. So again, statutorily, we will be reviewing that. And if confirmed, I certainly would be sensitive to those issues and any other issues with regards to potential interference.
Thank you. And let me just elaborate on a question I asked previously. We focused a great deal of attention on the Uniform Code of Military Justice, all of the articles and the procedures, but my memory of judicial proceedings is that the vast majority of judicial actions taken within the military is administrative processes through Article 15 principally. And one concern is how these new changes with respect to the UCMJ might affect the Article 15 process. Do you have any ideas or insights in that regard?
Well, Senator, certainly whenever new legislation is passed, there will always be issues with regards to its scope, its meaning, its interpretation, even its constitutionality. And so that likely could become a challenge with regards to how the new changes are implemented. So to that extent, any challenges could well end up before the court. And so I would be hesitant to comment on them particularly. But certainly Article 15 is a avenue that is used by commanders. One of the benefits of the Article 15 is that, as you're familiar with the terminology, it often gives our service members an opportunity to, in the Army, we'd say, soldier your way back. And so I would hope that commanders will continue to look at alternate means to address misconduct.
I think that's a very insightful comment because soldiering back, I think we've all seen it happen. Sometimes it doesn't happen, but many times it does, and that's good for the service and good for the individual soldier. Dr. Adams, it's been raised before about the cost that we're looking at in terms of getting sufficient pit production. This administration is committed to rebuilding the half-finished mixed oxide or MOX fuel plant at the Savannah River site, in addition to operating the existing plant at Los Alamos in order to achieve the 80 pits per year. The cost of converting the MOX plant to produce petroleum pits has increased from an initial 2018 estimate of some $4.6 billion to a December 2021 estimate of $8 to $11 billion. That's a significant change. Why do you think these cost increases, and how will you help set requirements to contain future costs? And also, how will you integrate these two facilities? There is one concern I've heard is that there will be a sort of a, if you will, a brain drain from Los Alamos to Savannah, which might leave both institutions without the, critical mass of talent to get the job done. So could you respond to those issues?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for raising that important issue and for giving me a chance to comment more fully on that. So first of all, let me say that while I have stated that I do not think we'll be making 80 pits per year by 2030 on our current path, I do firmly believe that if we stay on our current path, we will make 80 pits per year, with more than 30 per year at Los Alamos and more than 50 per year at Savannah River. I just cannot tell you exactly when the Savannah River production will come online. As far as the cost estimates at Savannah River, the NNSA has gotten a lot better at its cost estimates once the facility in question has been designed fairly thoroughly and the scope and size of the facility itself and its supporting infrastructures are known. We're not there yet with Savannah River. So the question is, why are our early estimates, why are the NNSA early estimates so low in general compared to the more realistic estimates that come out later? This is a question that I intend to pursue vigorously if I'm confirmed. I've had some conversations about this already. I believe there is a way to make them better. It is difficult, let me say, to do a cost estimate on a facility that hasn't been designed yet. So I kind of cut people a little bit of slack there. Nevertheless, we've got to do a lot better.
And could you comment on the potential for a brain drain of moving people from Los Alamos? I mean, I could see someone who's spent a career there and just for personal reasons, even though the job's still challenging, deciding he or she does not want to go from the deserts of New Mexico to the coast of South Carolina.
Yes, thank you for reminding me of that question, Senator. That was a concern that I had also early on. What I've seen actually happen is a win-win situation that's in progress right now, in that Savannah River employees are coming to Los Alamos to not only learn the business of pit production, but also to help out at Los Alamos with pit production. In a closed session sometime, we could talk about some of the specifics where the people from Savannah River have pitched in and made a significant difference in a positive way at Los Alamos.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Adams. And I've been informed that we have 8 colleagues that are on their way from a Commerce Committee. At this point, I would call the hearing to a recess for a few minutes. Please stand in place. As soon as the first of my colleagues arrive, we'll reconvene the hearing for additional questions. The committee stands in recess.